Hey everyone, Matt Krieger to review the September results. So let's jump right into it. Our average revenue per location this month was 18,174. That was down from what we saw last year. Last year was almost 26,000, just under 26,000. And this is the second month in a row we've seen this trend come down when comparing our revenue to the prior year. The good news is year to date, we are up over 30% on average per location. Last year we were at 150. This year we're at 217. So we've still seen some really good growth year to date. Just the last 2 months, we've taken a couple steps back in terms of revenue growth. In terms of overall revenue and seasonality, what we should see, our September revenue here, we should see this come up in the fall, and that makes a lot of sense in terms of seasonality. Now, because it's been so warm across the country, fall might fall a little later than what it did last year. But you can see last year, the 631, 654 really were our two best months that we saw in terms of system-wide revenue in 2023. So expect to see these revenue numbers bump back up, and hopefully we can see where we were or meet where we were last year. Going down to appointments, our average appointment this month was $271. Compare that to a year to date of $327. But I want to dive into this number just a little bit more. This 327 is pretty skewed by Q1. And I assume that's a lot of snow removal, things like that. But if I look at just January, February, and March, our average revenue per appointment was just over $425. And so what we're seeing is over the summer months, April through September, that average appointment value is $268. So really, this is right in line with what we've seen since April 1. So this, like I said, this is really being driven by that first part of the year. We had over 2,800 appointments booked in ServiceMinder. Now, I want to talk about this appointment completion percentage. So we had 94%, which if you look in this, it's been relatively consistent going all the way back through May, between this 93 and 95%, meaning that if we're booking an appointment in ServiceMinder, 94% of the time we're completing that booking. Now, some of this, we have to kind of think, when was ServiceMinder adoption really kind of hitting a critical point where we can really start to analyze and trust the data that we're seeing? And from what I can tell, it really was right around April 1st. And the reason I say that is from April going forward in ServiceMinder, there's been over 2,000 appointments booked per month. And so that's been relatively consistent. Of course, we've seen some ups and downs in terms of seasonality. But if you go back before this, if I look into October and November of last year, where this is 63 and 68%, a lot of that is ServiceMinder being adopted, learning to use the system. And so if I look into October last year, there was right around 1,000. Actually, there was less than 1,000 appointments booked in October last year. So that's why I say, as we're analyzing this data and we're really looking at this appointment data, it's really from April on that we really want to look at and be able to analyze. As we go down to proposals, we had the most proposals from a dollar value that we've ever had in the system. We had over $3.7 million of proposals go out in September. And that was really highlighted. There was two proposals over $100,000. One of them, I believe, was $162,000 or $165,000 was the highest that we saw. But overall, a really, really strong month in terms of proposals. And in terms of proposal volume, you can see ever since July, we've really had a nice increase up. Second straight month that we've been over $3 million in proposals sent out. So that's a really, really strong effort by everybody in the system. We sent out a total of 497 proposals, on average 28 per location. This average proposal value of $5,400, keep in mind, this is a trailing 6-month average. If I look at just September alone, the average proposal sent out was $7,500. And the one thing that we know historically looking back is that as our proposal value increases, our close rate typically decreases. And that makes a lot of sense. That's not an alarm or anything, but we just know that that's one of the trends that we see. And that's really relatively consistent across a lot of industries, right? As you're sending higher value proposals out there, as you're going for larger and larger clients, there's more competition there. And we're just going to see close rates come down. The the thing that we can see is we have had that average proposal value, specifically the last 2 months, kind of higher. And we can see that, we had a 25% close rate last month, 29% close rate this month. And so, we're seeing that creep back up. We've seen this as high as almost 40%, which is really a phenomenal close rate. I think where we want to really live and where I think we can be comfortable is really kind of closing on about a third of the proposals that we send out. And you can see going back into February, March, April, May, you can see that we really lived kind of in that 31 to 35% range, which is again about a third of our proposals that we send out. The amazing stat for this month that we saw was that our average days to accept. So that's the time from when a proposal is sent out to when it's marked accepted in the system. And so that is important that you're doing that data. It was 8 days this month. Now compare that to 30 days last month, 31 in July. So a relatively consistent trend coming into this month, and we just decreased it significantly. Now you might say, well, is this because less proposals were accepted? Is this less data that we're looking at? And it really isn't. In July, we saw 141 proposals accepted. In August, 144. Well, in September, we saw 142. So really, from a number of proposals accepted, it's right in line. The important kind of note to look at this when we dive into it, and I didn't compare this to August or July, so I don't have that data offhand. But over half of these proposals, 73 of these proposals, were accepted by either existing clients or on enhancements, which I assume enhancements are mostly with existing clients. And so, there's a kind of an old saying out there, and it's said a couple different ways, but a current customer is 7 more times less expensive, or 7 times less expensive to generate additional revenue from than a new customer. So in other words, to go out and get a new customer just costs more than trying to generate revenue from our current customers. And whether that 7 times is right or wrong, it's going to be different depending on the business and the industry. But the point of it being is that, I think a lot of times, a lot of businesses go out and they spend so much time, effort, and money, quite frankly, trying to generate new business. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. But I think what they forget is that they have a lot of clients that they can probably generate as much, if not more, business from them. And so having both a marketing plan, not just around generating new business with new customers, but also generating new business with our current customers, I think is really important. And we saw that really come through in September. So overall, looking forward to October, looking forward to November. Hopefully we see some big numbers, some big months there. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out. Thank you.